Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07 on this beautiful Tuesday morning. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 7:15, Andy Pollin with ESPN. He's going to tell us about the new stadium we just talked about. 7:35, Byron York, Washington Examiner on Trump's first 100 days. At 8:05, Rick Grinnell. He'll give us the latest Kennedy Center news and an update on this new Dolly Parton showcase, which is very exciting. At 8:35, Representative Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He'll give us the latest on Trump's immigration policies. I'm Julie Gunlock, joined by my friend Hans von Spakovsky with the Heritage Foundation. Good morning, Hans.
Good morning. We're halfway through the show,
We are.
And we're sitting in the high-tech WMAL studios, right?
Yes, we are. Speaking of immigration, Hans, I'm very worried about Michelle Obama. She seems to be... She's staying up late at night worrying about the people being kicked out of the country. Of course, her husband was the greatest deporter in U.S. presidential history. I don't think she was staying up late worrying about those immigrants.
Is she worried about the 100 criminal, illegal aliens whose pictures are on the White House lawn? Is she really worried about them being kicked out of the country?
Yes, and being exposed for the rapists and murderers that they are. I do love this. Look, if you're on the app and you're listening from outside of the D.C. region, you might not know this, but it has become, since Trump was elected in 2016, it's become very popular among liberals to sort of virtue signal with these lawn signs. They put, hate has no home here, kindness.
Except it's hate for Trump has a big
home there. Oh, of
home
course.
there.
Absolutely. Except if you're a Trump supporter. So now the White House is sort of really embraced that trend, and they now have lawn signs lining the White House lawn with mugshot. There's these sort of mugshot style posters showing the arrested, and I think they all been convicted?
I think many of them
have been convicted. Of some pretty heinous crimes. So, of course, the corporate media is very upset about this. Let's listen to Jake Tapper, cut 25.
The Trump administration is approaching its first 100-day mark with a full court press on the issue of illegal immigration, and they really don't want you to miss it. So they subtly and tastefully deck the White House North Lawn with dozens of yard signs featuring photos of people that the Trump administration claims are in the country illegally, each poster saying arrested and listing the alleged offensive with which they have been charged.
Yeah, the CNN has decided not to show it, not to show the faces, so they blurred them out.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't blur out Jake Tapper's.
And then cut 26 on why they're blurring them out.
CNN's working to confirm the identities, and if there are actual allegations against these people, until then we are blurring their identities.
Yeah, we're just going to put up, regular folks caught, snagged in this,
You're
roundup.
right. I mean, come on. And look, all the language he uses is intended to not express reality. People's pictures. No, criminal, illegal aliens pictures.
Yeah.
Alleged illegal alien. No, immigration judges said they're in the country illegally. I mean, everything he says, all the language he even uses, intended to make this look like they're just ordinary Americans.
They're just Maryland dads.
Oh, right.
Just Maryland dads.
Right.
Meanwhile, there is a congressman. I got to get your reaction to this. Yesterday, this congressman, Representative Shri Thenadar, I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly.
I think
Thenadar.
you got it right.
He released a video saying that he has introduced articles of impeachment against President Trump. No surprise. We knew they were going to do this. I actually thought this was an SNL skit.
He looks
like Chris Kattan.
He does, with his hair and everything. It looks like an SNL skit, and it's about as funny as an SNL skit.
It is, and we're going to play the clip. But I just want to set this up. You have to understand. Okay, he's sitting at a desk, and there's an image of the cat. Even the image they use, it looks like an SNL set. It really does, because it doesn't look real. And then, okay, let's just listen to this. Cut 27.
This is Congressman Shri Thanedar. Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, that has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump. The court said the wrongfully deported Kilmer Garcia must be allowed to return and receive due process.
He did.
Trump ignored it. He ignored the Constitution. He ignored the very checks and balances that keep our democracy intact. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a dangerous, deliberate pattern. That's why today I introduced a resolution to impeach Donald J. Trump.
Again, I wish you could see him, because he looks exactly like Chris Kattan. If you don't know who that is, Google it. 90s, one of the stars of SNL. And he looks an awful lot like him. Let's go to cut 28, where the congressman lists his articles of impeachment.
Introduced a resolution to impeach Donald J. Trump, outlining 7 articles of impeachment. Article 1, obstruction of justice and abuse of executive power. From denying due process to unlawful deportations, Trump defied court orders. Article 2, taking away Congress's power of the purse. Trump dismantled agencies and froze funds without permission from Congress. Article 3, abuse of trade powers and international aggression. He imposed damaging tariffs and threatened military invasions of our allies. Article 4, violation of First Amendment rights. He has retaliated against journalists, attorneys, and critics.
We've had enough. We've had enough.
Look, even if this wasn't an SNL skit, it sounds like he got an SNL script writer to write his script for this.
I mean, it really is unbelievable. I mean, Trump wants to impeach him for Trump deportations, obviously something that is within the executive powers. Doge, he says Doge is one of the reasons, again, cleaning up the federal government well within his rights. He talks about he goes on to talk about bribery and corruption.
What is he talking about?
He talks about trade, certainly within the power of the federal government and the president.
Everything he said is untrue. He can't point to a single court order, for example, that President Trump has disobeyed. Now, I can point to court orders that President Biden disobeyed, like when the Supreme Court said to him, you can't just forgive student loans, and Biden said he was going to do it anyway. But everything else that he mentions, he wants to impeach the president for
trade deals?
Trade deals, or for removing an alien from Maryland who was under a standing deportation order, who was in the country illegally, who is an El Salvadorian citizen and was returned to El Salvador. For
and
that, he wants to impeach the president?
And 2 judges determined was part of MS-13.
Yes.
Yes.
And a domestic abuser, according to his
own wife. Yeah. We'll have more on this. Continue in a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
There's that music. We are so excited about this, the chance that the Commanders are coming back to D.C. and a new stadium being built on replacing the current RFK, sort of crumbling RFK Stadium. Joining us now is Andy Pollin. He's with ESPN's 6:30 host, and he is here to talk about that new stadium. Hi, Andy.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so there's lots of excitement. Jubilation was the word used yesterday. The mayor is saying this is going to be great. Welcome home. She's actually said, welcome home. The owner similarly, similarly excited. But then Phil Mendelson, the head of the D.C. Council, sort of was a wet blanket yesterday. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the ball, I would say, is at about the 5-yard line. And in order to get it in the end zone, they are going to have to get approval both from Congress and the city council. And right now, the votes aren't there. You're going to need 7 votes to get it through. Phil Mendelson, who is with the city council, has been outspoken about this, and the chair and has said that the city should not be paying $1 billion of taxpayer money to help finance the stadium. I mean, the cost of stadiums has obviously skyrocketed. The owners are going to put up $2.7 billion, and the city would put up $1 billion, and the ownership will handle cost overruns, as there always are in these things. So I would think that with some negotiating, they'll get it through, but you never know. I mean, and if it doesn't happen, the alternatives aren't great. It means,
what are those alternatives?
Well, it probably would mean that they would rebuild on the same site that they are now in Landover, and I don't think anybody wants that. And I think this would be a good thing for the city, and I think this would be a great thing for the football team, but you know, these battles always go on in this kind of environment.
Real quick, I mean, the current RFK Stadium is such an eyesore on the city. There has to be some calculation as to the revenues that could be brought into the city and how it would rejuvenate that entire area.
Yeah, this would be the centerpiece of a 180-acre campus, as they call it, and it's going to be a sportsplex that'll go along with it. And the other thing that you have to recognize about football stadiums now than in the past, this will be a dome stadium. So there won't be just 10 football games played there every year. There'll be about 200 events with concerts. Wow. They can bring in a Final Four. They can attract a Super Bowl. Now, there has been one Super Bowl that's been played in quote-unquote dicey weather. It was like the one in New York years ago, and they had a blizzard on Monday. They dodged that. So I don't think the NFL is be interested in putting a Super Bowl in an open-air, cold-weather city anymore.
Are you talking about the Ice Bowl?
No, the Ice Bowl goes back to the 60s. This was about 2016, something like that, and they played it at New York City, and it was a blowout game. Denver lost to Seattle by like 40 points or something like that, and then they had a blizzard the next day. So if the weather had been a little bit different, that would have been pretty difficult to play a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Andy, I'm always fascinated by the finances of this. When the team says they're going to put up $2.7 billion, are they talking about that money coming from the Commanders, or is it from the entire all the NFL, all the different teams contributing money to do this? Where's that $2.7 billion coming from?
It's the Commanders' ownership, and the league has a loan program, but the cap on that is $300 million. It's a very small percentage of what they mean. These are guys who have been very successful, and they're local. They have ties. They're in their 50s and 60s. They remember the days of going to RFK Stadium when the Redskins were winning Super Bowls. So they're looking at this, they're going to make money. They're businessmen, but they're also looking at this as something of a civic pride type of thing.
You have a council member, Brianna Nadu, saying that the stadium at RFK is not the right investment for our city. I'm just trying to understand the objection here, given that RFK is an eyesore, it's crumbling. I know I've already asked this, but what is the objection? Do you know?
RFK is going to be torn down regardless. So what they want to do is turn that 80-acre area into housing and other things, that the city needs, obviously. But this also would include some housing that goes along with it. It's a big plan tied in with the city. And
so there is a competing plan.
Yeah. I mean, look, RFK is coming down. The question is, is it coming down for a new stadium or is it coming down for something else? In addition, the owners of the team have already made a deal with Maryland that they will dismantle what is now called Northwest Stadium when they leave, so that won't become a rotting eyesore. So, it looks like they've crossed all their T's and dotted the I's. The question is, where does it go for the city council, and, how does that ultimately get through?
How soon does it come up before the city council? Do we know that?
I think it's going to be this summer in the next couple of months. And then, the goal would be that, surprisingly, they can't just blow up RFK Stadium. They have to dismantle it, and it's like 18 months. So once that comes down, then once they put a shovel in the ground, it's 3 years before the stadium would go up. So the goal would be to open it for the 2030 season.
Well, Andy, I hope you'll come back and keep us updated on this. I really hope it happens.
I do too. I think it would be a great thing for the city, and I think it will. I mean, we had a battle over this when the Nationals came to town in 2005. They were owned by Major League Baseball, and the city put up the money. The city built the stadium, not the owners.
Yeah.
And there was a battle there, and it came down to the 11th hour. There was a councilwoman named Linda Kropp who had severe opposition to this, and it came through. And we've had baseball here for 20 years, including a World Series.
Wow, looking forward to your updates on this. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys.
It is 7:23. Coming up, Byron York. Keep it here at 7:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:36. Thanks for letting us be a part of your early Tuesday morning in the nation's capital. You're listening to O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 8:05, Rick Grinnell. He'll give us the latest news out of the Kennedy Center and talk about that new upcoming Dolly Parton showcase. I might be a little excited about that. And at 8:35, Representative Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He'll give us the latest on Trump's immigration policies. I'm Julie Gunlock, joined by my friend Hans von Spakovsky, the coolest name in Washington, D.C. Hello, Hans.
Hey, although I think Gunlock, Spakovsky and Company, wouldn't that be a good name?
Has a ring to it.
It does.
Has a ring to it. Joining us now is Byron York, Washington Examiner. Good morning, Byron.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Another cool name, Byron York.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
There you go.
So happy 100 days of the Trump administration, Byron. You've written a piece on that, on how to measure Trump's 100 days. How do we measure Trump's 100 days?
Well, first of all, there have been so many previews of the 100 days. It's like when day 100 gets here, we're talked out about it.
Well, I hope not.
But if we must, well, obviously, starting in on about day 90, there was a whole slew of polls that said this is the worst presidency ever. Trump's a disaster. The polls have gone down, and everything's terrible. And they've cited this one poll, worst since the Great Depression. And it was a Washington Post poll that said Trump's job approval was 39%. So that attracted a lot of attention because the other polls were getting his job approval at 42, 43, 44%. The number the Washington Post was pushing was a number of a poll of all adults. And the others were publishing polls of registered voters, which are generally more respected. So, the 39% number you can throw out. But clearly, Trump's polls have gone down in the first 100 days. I mean, there's no doubt about that. If you look at the Real Clear Politics average of polls, which I do, it is down about 5 points. So I think we kind of know it's why that is. It's a mixture of some of the things Trump has done. Clearly, he's created a lot of worries with all this tariff stuff. And it's been, it is quite uncertain. We don't exactly know what's going on. Plus, there has been absolutely unrelenting, totally negative press coverage, and it's a time-honored practice of the press just to beat the hell out of somebody and then take a poll and show that their popularity has gone down. So they've done that. One thing I thought is useful to look at is a question that's asked in almost every poll, which is, do you think the country is going in the right direction or the wrong direction? It's sometimes called the right track, wrong track poll question. And if you look at that, it's really interesting. Look at it for the last year. A year ago, when Biden was president, it's kind of like a funnel, and the big fat part of the funnel is a year ago. And basically between 60 and 70, 75% of the people thought that the country's going in the wrong direction. And by the way, at all times, most people think the country's going in the wrong
Right.
direction. I mean, really, it's very, very rare to see a majority say the country's going in the right direction. And then between maybe 35% felt 30% felt the country was going in the right direction. Then you look at the arrival of Trump, and boom, it gets really narrow. And so all of a sudden, 40 to 45% of the people think the country's going in the right direction, and 50 to 55% say it's going in the wrong direction. And basically, still, Steve Kornacki pointed this out, the poll analyst at MSNBC, said, to find a time when even 40% said the country's going in the right direction, you have to go back to 2012 during the days of the sainted Obama administration. So that's what you have now. You have about 40% in the Real Clear Politics average of polls say that the country is going in the right direction. And I think that if you're going to talk about Trump's polls, you can talk about his job approval, of course, but you also ought to talk about the number of people who now believe the country is going in the right direction under Trump, who did not believe it was under Biden.
The thing, Byron, is I've been in D.C. now through 4 administrations, and I don't think I've ever seen a president more active in the first 3 months of his administration than this one. And part of it, I think, isn't it because he didn't just have a successive term. He had 4 years, he and his people had 4 years to prepare for another term, and I think you can see it in how organized they've been and what they've been doing.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think everyone would agree that this is the most energetic presidency that they've ever seen. So this 100 days is just, what he has done is just extraordinary. Now, we should point out that basically the 100 days have been consumed with executive action as opposed to anything that Congress has done, because Congress is designed to move more slowly anyway. But it's been an incredibly energetic start. And I think even Trump would say that taking the break, being out of office for 4 years, allowed him to think through a lot of things, not just in terms of policy, but in terms of personnel, in terms of how you be president. And I think the other factor that is there, maybe he's not talked about as much, is that on July 13th of last year, he narrowly escaped death, being hit in the ear by an assassin's bullet. And I think that has made him feel that, if you're going to do something, you need to do it now, because tomorrow you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And I think that's a factor in this.
Byron, I can't let you go without asking your opinion of some of the things we heard at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, specifically Axios' Alex Thompson saying that, it was the deception of the White House and the people around President Biden, which is the reason the sort of media missed the story. And then, of course, thanking Jake Tapper, just a nice cherry on the top of that sundae. What were your thoughts hearing this? Was it just because of the deception of the White House?
Well, Alex, no. I mean, first of all, basically the situation was, speaking of the press corps as a whole, you had the White House who did not want the public to know that the president was so infirm, that his cognitive difficulties had gotten so bad. Right. So you have a White House who don't want people to know, and then you have a press who didn't want to know either. And so they just didn't look into it. And because they saw people like me, like you, saying this, they felt they had to knock it down, actually. And so they gave a lot of credence to White House statements that Biden was as sharp as he's ever been, sharp as a tack, and they criticized people who pointed out the public instances of Biden's infirmities and said that they were cheap fakes pushed by the Republican Party. So Alex Thompson himself did a few stories, actually.
Yeah, he did.
About White House efforts to cover this up. But the press corps as a whole should be pretty ashamed of themselves, because they just didn't want to know, and they didn't want to see what was in front of their face.
Well, we've got to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming on this morning Always great
Thanks,
talking
folks.
to you.
Always enjoy it.
It is 7:45. You know, Hans, there aren't many examples of anyone in Hollywood being good parents. In fact, there's awful lot of examples of Hollywood kids kind of being screwed up. And I will say, this latest example of a Hollywood star actually exhibiting some good parenting skills, his kids are screwed up too. So I won't give him credit for being just a star parent. But Ben Affleck, this sort of viral moment is pretty funny. He was on a talk show and he talked about what he tells his kids when they want expensive things. Let's play cut 31.
We were talking in the makeup room before the show about this clip that went viral of you with your son, and he was
obsessed with this.
Looking at these sneakers, which were an absurdly high price, and he wanted them. And you had the best line, which I plan to use, which is, "I'm rich, you're not."
I was like, "This nigga was $6,000. What are you talking about? What are you gonna do? Mow lawns? Like, you got $6,000?" He's like, "We have the money." I was like, "I have the money. You're broke." Listen, you love your kids. You want to give them everything and do everything for them, but I think you definitely do them a disservice by not connecting. You want something meaningful that you want.
Yeah,
you have to work.
That's great advice. I mean, so if you didn't hear it, his kid wanted $6,000 tennis shoes. Okay, kid. I didn't know tennis shoes got that expensive. I mean, I know I'm kind of
there's no tennis shoe in the world worth $6,000.
No tennis shoe in the world. I know that I seem kind of square here saying I didn't know. I know shoes are expensive, but my God, $6,000. So apparently he's walking around. He says, "Dad, you're rich." And Ben Affleck says, "I'm rich. You're not. You know, what are you going to do?" I love this. I think this is important. And I think, look, I have 3 kids, 3 boys. My husband says I spoil them. I do tend to, I love, to get them singing, but I would never do that. And I think this is very good parenting advice coming from an unlikely source.
Well, no, it's good because think how many fewer problems we'd have in the world if we didn't have spoiled rich kids who never had to work or take responsibility for their actions.
That is true. It is 7:53.